Okay. So having said all that, Emily, your thoughts?
Well, yeah, I mean, that was a part of the interview that you just played that I was trying to like stand up and clap when I was listening because it was such a great explanation of what people are doing now and where the wires are exactly getting crossed, which is that I actually think a lot of even thoughtful people who are coming to this conversation in good faith, like I genuinely think she was, don't totally watch the programs that they're engaging with enough to understand what's really happening and what the relationship is with the audience, because your audience would hear the question that you just read out and say, what do you mean? Like, of course, Megyn has to criticize. It doesn't matter that Megyn went and endorsed Donald Trump. She's been criticizing him like 3 days later. Like, it just is a complete, a lot of times it's from these sound bites that go viral is when people who don't regularly listen to a show will dip in. And so they kind of think that they understand what happens, but it's really totally different. Like your relationship with the audience is totally different than somebody who genuinely doesn't listen to it every day, fully understands, or, even like 3 times a week understands. And that is where I think it's, I think she thought that you were working with the campaign, cooperating with the campaign, that you were a part of the campaign because you gave that speech, when in fact, all you did was be more honest with your audience than a lot of the journalists who are even just straight news reporters who work in their desk at the White House and absolutely know that they're voting for Kamala Harris, come to every question believing Kamala Harris good, Donald Trump bad. Every time they sit down and write copy, you're just being honest with your audience. And that's an improvement for most Americans.
Yeah, Eliana, this is what I was trying to say to her. Like, basically, you guys at the Times are not fooling anyone. Everyone knows that you're leftist. And everyone who listens to this show knows I'm more on the right. And in owning it and just expressly saying, this is what I'm going to do in the ballot box and this is what I think you should do, it's really not, it's not as big a transgression off of where we used to be as she would have us believe. Like, there's no one in America who thinks the majority of New York Times staffers voted Trump.
I think that was a really important part of the conversation. And look, for 20 plus years, you can trace it back to Dan Rather in 2004, but even before that, when we had these experiences with titans of supposedly neutral purveyors of the news who claimed to be one thing, and then there were scandals that showed them to be operating in the service of one political party. And so your statement that, hey, disclosing your biases up front actually builds trust with an audience rather than undermining it or undermining one's credibility was, I think, really important. And what I think that the Times often misses is that our problem with them, our frustration with them, and I say this from the Beacon all the time, like the Beacon, we say we're conservative, like we own that. And our problem with you is that you claim to be down the middle and we know you're something else. And that is what has broken trust with audiences and readers. So when you don't cover Doug Emhoff and the scandals surrounding him, that's trust breaking. If you were to come out and say, like, hey, we don't cover scandals about Democrats because it undercuts our political priors or our mission here, it's going to piss off our readers. Like, okay, we'd be fine with that. It's the posturing that you're fair.
Yes, right.
That
just own it.
Breaks trust with people.
I don't understand
but
why
I think that
in today's day and age they don't.
But that is why there's this wide open space for people like you and Joe Rogan and others to go build these huge audiences because they're not fooling people.
Well, Megyn,
they're just breaking trust with people.
Can I answer why they don't? I think that's actually a really interesting part of this because I believe that you could fix trust in media tomorrow if the New York Times and even the good faith people, like there's maybe 10% of journalists can genuinely be neutral and don't have like significant biases in one direction or the other. You can't tell it in their copy. Like there are some people who can do that, but they're very, very rare. But the New York Times and the Washington Post just came out tomorrow and said, our reporting, not our editorial side, our reporting leans left. The vast majority of our reporters are liberal. We think, maybe they put one of those signs, in this house, we believe X, Y, and Z, outside of the Washington Post and New York Times. Like, they would fix trust with their audience, like right off the bat, because they do some genuinely decent reporting. Just tell us what you think. But the reason they can't do that is that they are all in these cultural bubbles where they don't understand that their biases are biases. Like, they think this is just a matter of, human rights or decency or civility, but they don't understand that actually those are significant biases in one direction or the other. So they're in such a bubble that they're not even able to determine anymore what's a bias and what's like actually just like things that are still controversial and contentious outside of their little bubbles, and what's actually just something that's a point of consensus that we all agree on. They can't tell one from the other because they're so siloed in what Charles Murray called super zips: New York, Washington, D.C., L.A., where upper middle class educated people disproportionately cluster and are disproportionately powerful. They can't even tell anymore.
Yeah. Okay. So I've had these debates online, and the audience knows I love Sasha Stone. She has a great Substack, Free Thinking Through the Fourth Turning, which she turns into a podcast, and I love. She's been on the program, but she asked this online recently, and I took a stab at answering it, and we had like a back and forth on it. But she was asking, like, I'm going to screw it up, but it was basically, why are they doing this? Like, why do they do this to us? They continue to pretend that they're neutral, and we know they're not. And I said, they genuinely believe they're neutral. Like, they're not like, I'm biased and I don't want anyone to find out, Eliana. They're like, no, we are the truthful ones. Like, we are the gatekeepers, like, what is life going to be like if there are no rules? And in fact, she and I kind of got into this too, where she's like, what does that look like? Where the rules are out the window. And here's a little bit of that in SOT 5.
I think you're right that there is some way that we are seeing things or discussing something different, right? I guess what I'm trying to understand is, what are the rules of this new world that you are inhabiting? Are you sort of making them up as you go along and you're sort of seeing what it is? Or do you adhere to some of those old values that you used to embrace?
The only way one succeeds in this medium is by violating all those rules that we used to have in journalism, where you don't really talk about yourself at all. You don't talk about your opinions. You might have a bias. Your only goal is to hide it, not to own it and then get past it with the audience. It's just a whole new world. And it's okay. We used to be much more partisan and openly partisan in our journalism and our media, 100+ years ago, and we survived that just fine. And we will survive this just fine too. What the audience wants from me is my authentic self and no filter. What they can smell from a mile away is a phony. So they have no problem with me endorsing Trump, even if they don't like Trump. What they would have a problem with is me pretending I don't have a horse in the race and going out and trying to deliver the news as though I'm completely objective and I'm just as open-minded to Kamala as I am to Donald Trump. And the secret addendum to that, Eliana, is that is not only actually the rule for me in new media, it's actually the rule for you too, Lulu. It's actually the rule for everyone. You just haven't realized it yet.
I mean, look, I think there's some truth to the idea that they don't realize they're biased, but I'm not totally sure that's the case. I mean, when you have the CEO of NPR testifying before Congress and saying, yes, we're 87 Democrats and 0 Republicans, like, it does sort of defy logic that they can truly believe that doesn't actually show up in any of the news coverage.
Mm-hmm. I mean, and not to mention, like, do you believe this country is about black plunder?
Right.
That woman, right? But I genuinely believe that woman is there like, I don't remember ever tweeting that, but that sounds right. Like, I genuinely believe that woman took to the congressional seat last week and was like, I'm not biased and NPR's not biased. Like, we check our bias. There's a legit wall between me and the actual reporters at NPR, Emily. And that protects us from and then when you ask the follow-up question, we're like, what about the people on the other side of that wall? What have you done to satisfy yourself that they're not just like you? And reflecting those biases in their reporting, it's like the monkey with the see no evil, hear no evil, speak like I know nothing.
Seriously. And I think actually Eliana's point is a legitimate one. And one thing you hear from the media a lot when you point out those discrepancies is they will say, okay, but it's because, like, look at Donald Trump. It's because Republicans don't have as many serious people to put forth that aren't, trafficking in disinformation. That's always the excuse, right? But they don't even understand sometimes that they're completely out of the loop. They dismiss as conspiracy theories often when Republicans point out the lies or the pattern of lies that certain Democrats have told, because again, they will categorically say it's not serious if it's coming from the Federalist. It's not serious if it's coming from Ben Shapiro. So they don't even understand, like they're not even able to make those equivalencies. They say of course we don't platform as many Republicans as we do Democrats. Republicans have an endemic truth problem. And it's like, you weren't covering, for example, Biden, as you started with, Megyn, like the White House was suddenly talking about how these were, quote, cheap fakes. And you guys literally like reprinted their press releases for several weeks until the debate, and you couldn't do it anymore. There's certain storylines like Tara Reid. There's certain storylines that they just check out of because they assume it's all Republican.
How many people, literally, how many people in America can say that they've interviewed both Trump accusers on the sexual assault or harassment front and Tara Reid? I might be the only one. Like, the New York Times cannot say that. That's what I was trying to say to her. Like, there was another part that didn't make the dance where I said, look, to me, it's funny, that you're asking this about me and how I can maintain my ability to criticize him, notwithstanding my endorsement. Because I said, this is the sin of which the left is guilty. Like, no one on the left can really ask this question you're asking me. There are very few who actually do raise these questions on their own side and who are willing to go after Kamala and Joe Biden or Barack Obama or, God forbid, Michelle Obama in the way I go after the right and Trump. They just won't do it. If you listen to my show, you listen for a week, you'll have multiple examples of me raising questions about the way Trump has done something or his team has done something. But I don't have TDS. I can see the good he does very clearly, and I have no problem giving him credit for the wins. After that, she said, I'll say that Ezra Klein, one of my colleagues, was one of the earliest people to call for Biden to drop out of the race. And I said, where was the Times editorial doing that at any point prior to the debate?
But that was also January. I mean, that was January.
Yes.
Like this, that
and
could
he
have
was
been
only
years
saying
ago.
that he's old. Ezra Klein was saying Biden's too old. He wasn't saying he's lost it. He's like, oh, he's too old to be president. And she said, oh well. I said, where was that? Where's the Times editorial doing that before that debate? She said, well, the editorial pages, as you know, are different than the news pages. And I said, where was the news coverage? Where was the news coverage? Where was Peter Baker documenting the fact that these brain doctors had been to the White House 10 times over the prior year? And she said, I'm not going to litigate the Times' coverage. And I understood she was not there to defend the New York Times, which I totally get. Like, she wasn't sent to me to come on my show as a representative of the Times and to defend them. She's like, I'm trying to do a nice profile of you, lady. Why do you keep attacking me? And I was basically saying, you can't ask me how I could possibly be fair to Trump, notwithstanding my endorsement, when you're the New York Times. You just can't do it. You don't go out and buy a life jacket when the boat's already sinking, and you don't buy gold when the economy's already collapsed. Clearly, others are heeding this advice, as gold hit all-time highs already this year. It's not too late for you, and you could have Birch Gold help you diversify into physical gold. Birch Gold specializes in helping you convert an existing IRA or 401k into a tax-sheltered IRA in physical gold for no money out of pocket. One recent 5-star review said Birch Gold was, quote, knowledgeable, helpful, non-pressure. Get your free info kit on gold by texting the letters MK to the number 989898. There's no obligation, just useful information. With an A+ rating from the Better Business Bureau and countless 5-star reviews, just text MK to 989898 and let the experts at Birch Gold help you secure your future today with gold. Thanks so much for watching. If you like what you just saw, hit the subscribe button for more clips and full episodes.